Well, here we are, Superman 64. You know, I didn't just pick up this game to do a review of it. I actually did own this game when it was new and I was a kid. I played it, I couldn't beat the first level, I couldn't figure out how any of the levels worked. I suffered through this piece of crap just like everybody else who was suckered into buying this game because of the Superman animated series. I eventually sold my copy of the game to some poor EB game store, only to find out years later that the one game that I threw away went on to become infamous as one of the worst video games of all time. Anyway, several years later, I decided to make videos about video games to put on YouTube for the inexplicable entertainment of others, and then I saw this game sitting on the shelf of a used game store for $5, and here we are. This game just confuses me, and not just because it makes no sense. How does a game like this get made? You'd think that a game this bad, a game where absolutely nothing works, a game where every single design decision was the wrong one. If a team of monkeys had been working on this game, they would have gotten something right, at least on accident. How in the hell could a video game turn out this bad? I don't even know what to say to lead into this review, so let's do this. So anyway, immediately when you start the game, you start flying through rings. This is the one thing that everybody remembers about this game, flying through an endless stretch of rings. The reason why everybody remembers the rings most prominently about this game is because flying through these rings is absolutely miserable. The game's flight controls are very, very sensitive. Superman turns on a dime, and moving the control stick just a little bit causes Superman to swerve way off course. I know it looks like I'm doing a good job here, but look at what I'm doing with the control stick. I'm jerking the control stick around like I barely have any control over Superman. Because I don't. The controls are so sensitive that I got used to flying by making spastic jerks on the control stick to nudge Superman in the direction I want him to go. This is the only way that I'm able to play this game. The flight controls are awful, and trust me, nothing pisses me off more about a game than barely functional controls because they're a constant annoyance that never goes away. You're allowed to miss 3 rings. If you skip any more than that, you have to start the course over. However, because the rings are so close together, going slightly off course one single time is enough to screw you. If you haven't gotten the controls down perfectly and you make one little mistake, Superman flies way the hell off course and you're boned. This game doesn't give you any opportunity or difficulty curve to get used to the controls. It's like the game expects you to have mastered these broken-ass controls as soon as you turn the game on. You have to get these controls down fast or else you won't be able to beat the first level, and when I was a kid, I played this game for probably years and I never got past this first level. I don't know if it's muscle memory from when I was a kid or if I'm just naturally awesome, but I can actually get through these flying levels without too much trouble. However, just because I don't have too much trouble getting through these rings, that doesn't make these flying levels fun. I have never played a flying game that forced a player to fly through rings. And do you know why? Because flying through rings is not, never has been, and never will be fun. Some games like Star Fox 64 and TIE Fighter have you fly through rings as a training mode so that you can get accustomed to the controls, but to make flying through rings a primary gameplay mechanic like Superman does, you don't do that! You just don't do that! The good news is that the game has 3 difficulty settings. If you go to the game's options, you can select an easy, normal, or hard difficulty, and the game's default is normal. If you play the game on easy mode, you don't have to fly through rings, you just fly straight towards your objective, which is how the game should have been designed in the first place. The bad news is that if you play the game on easy mode, the game comes back to bite you in the ass, but we'll get to that later. After you fly through the course of rings, one sentence of instruction appears on the screen, and a mini-mission starts up where you have to pick up and throw 2 cars before they hit civilians. The problem is that you're given maybe 2 seconds to read the text box that appears to give you instructions, and the game only gives you 6 seconds to stop one of the cars. Unless you've already played this mission several times already, you're not going to know what you're supposed to do, you'll fail the mission, and you'll have to start the course of rings over again. What was wrong with leaving the text box on the screen until I press a button to exit it? You know, like every other video game in the history of time has ever done? You can review the last text box that was shown to you by pressing the L button, but you'd never know that unless you paused the game and looked up its controls. If you screw up the mission, you have to fly through the course of rings again just for another crack at the mini-mission. If you beat the mission, your reward is another course of rings! After you beat that course of rings, you have to pick up a car and carry it to the end of the street. You pick up the car by flying into it, but it's not working. Shit. The game didn't register that I was trying to pick up the car, and now I have to fly through the rings again. After you finish that task, you have to fly through another course of rings. After that, you punch out 4 of Luthor's goons. Then you fly through more frickin' rings! After that, you have to blow away 3 tornadoes with Superman's super breath. Yes, believe it or not, you actually get to use Superman's powers in this game. You activate his powers with the C button, at least I think that you do. What's wrong now? I'm pressing the button. The super breath icon is in the corner of the screen. Why isn't Superman using his super breath? Blow, damn it, blow! Why the hell isn't this working? I didn't figure this out until I stopped the game and went to the game's practice mode. Do you want to know why Superman's super breath wasn't working? Because you have to pick up energy for Superman's powers before he can use any of them. Superman needs ammo to use his own powers. That's bullcrap. And Superman's breath sucks too. It has a range of like 1 foot and that's it. That's pathetic. That's not going to do jack squat to help you fight enemies. This is the big problem with Superman games. Most developers are afraid that if they give the player unfettered access to Superman's powers, the player will be too strong and the game will be way too easy. So rather than design around Superman's powers so that the game is still challenging, when developers make a Superman game, they cut down all of Superman's power so that Superman can't do anything. Do you have any idea how sad it is that the only game that's gotten Superman right is Lego Batman 2? Superman has 3 other powers that you can use in the game. There's Heat Vision, which helps you kill some of the weaker enemies and does nothing else. Super Speed, which lets you run fast for a little while and does nothing else. And my favorite superpower, X-Ray Vision. And do you want to know why X-Ray Vision is my favorite power-up? No, not that, you perverts! My favorite power-up is the X-Ray Vision because, you're not even going to believe me when I tell you this, X-Ray Vision does nothing. You can only find an X-Ray Vision power-up in one of the game's levels, and using the superpower does absolutely nothing. And there's one more thing that I need to mention. The bullshit is piling up too quickly. This game's practice mode is absolutely pointless. Do you want to know what the practice mode is? You fly through one short course of rings, the game tells you how to use your superpowers, and that's it. After that, you just fly through Metropolis with absolutely nothing to do and nothing to interact with. What exactly am I supposed to be practicing here? Sitting around with my thumb up my butt because I've got nothing to do? Because that's why I play video games in the first place! Take a good look at the screen right here as I roam Metropolis with nothing to do. Am I the only one who notices that the entire screen is covered by fog? This is a problem that games have grappled with ever since they evolved past side-scrollers. You see, video game processors can't render an infinite amount of environment around the player. You can't look off into a city and see perfectly for an infinite distance. The game can only render so much of the world at one time. Even modern games have this problem. The technology just isn't there yet. Nintendo 64 games solved the problem of processors only being able to render a finite amount of the game world at once by using a visual effect called distance fog. Anything that's beyond a certain draw distance from the player gets gradually blurred out into nothingness. Superman 64's graphics processor is so weak that the game can only render a very small portion of the game's map at any given time. Your visibility is very poor, and believe me, you'll probably be able to make a drinking game out of how many times I bitch about the distance fog in this review. The killer part is that, even with the game's awful draw distance, the game still has frame rate issues all the damn time. You'll be flying around the city when Superman will just all of a sudden start going much faster than he had been, and this usually screws up your flying, and shortly thereafter he'll slow down again. Either A, Superman keeps breaking wind and the force of the expulsion propels him forward, or B, this game's basic code is so crap that the game's processor is pushed to its absolute limits during basic gameplay, and the game has to slow down to compensate. The game's instruction manual tries to explain the draw distance by saying that the distance fog is kryptonite fog. I'm sure they thought they were being clever, but guess what? I consulted with my friend Dan, who knows a lot more about Superman than I do, and he said that if there was that much kryptonite fog in the city, it would kill Superman and the entire city's population because kryptonite is radioactive. Oh, right, back to the game. You can forgive me for getting distracted from this piece of crap. After you blow away the tornadoes, you have to fly through another goddamn course of rings! Really? 5 different courses of rings in the first level of the game? Did that seriously sound like a good idea? No wonder the angry video game nerd gave up halfway through the first level. Yes, Superman 64 actually does have multiple levels. In fact, Superman 64 is broken up into 2 different kinds of levels. Some of the game's levels are flying, or ride levels, and after you finish your 5th course of rings, the first level mercifully ends, and you move on to the first maze level, the dam. The objective of this level is to stop Mala from blowing up the dam with bombs. I know that sounds simple, but trust me, this game's maze levels are even worse than its flying levels. All you gamers that could never beat the first level of this game, be thankful that you never experienced this hell. For starters, the dam level is full of robots. Some of them shoot lasers at you and some of them drop exploding mines on your head. There's just one tiny problem with the robots. They explode when you kill them! If you're too close to a robot when it explodes, it takes away a huge chunk of your health, and you only get one life for each level. You have to finish every single indoor level without dying once, and that's one of the things that drives you craziest in this game. You have to be very careful when fighting the enemies in this stage, because if a single enemy blows up in your face, you lose so much health that you're pretty much automatically screwed. I had to play this level running away from the enemies without fighting them, which I should never be forced to do, because that was the only way that I could survive this level. As for the level itself, just wait until you find out the kind of shit that you have to do to finish this level. First you find a keycard and you use it on the main computer to open the first chamber. You go into the water of the first chamber and you find a keycard to automatically open the side doors. You find a terminal in the tunnel off the main tunnel to drain the water in the main chamber. Once the water has been drained, you go talk to the dam workers who give you access to the other two main chambers. From there you have 10 minutes to disarm the bombs, and it took me about a dozen deaths and having to replay this level over and over again about a dozen times to get this far because the robots kept killing me. You also run into Mala, who you'd think would make for an interesting boss fight since she has all of Superman's powers, but all she does is run up and punch you, and you defeat her by punching her in the face a few times. It's less an epic boss fight and more a bout of rock'em sock'em robots. So now I have to figure out how to defuse these bombs. Punching the bomb does nothing. Interacting with the bomb with the B button does nothing. I found an ice breath power-up. Freezing the bomb does nothing. Freezing the bomb and then punching it does nothing. So what the hell do I do? I've tried everything and nothing works. Oh, you freeze the bomb until it falls down a little bit. So freezing the bomb and encasing it in ice doesn't work, but freezing the bomb slightly longer and encasing it in slightly thicker ice is what disarms the bombs. If the ice breath didn't work the first time, why would I think that it would work the second time? This game makes no sense! These indoor levels don't give you any remotely vague instructions on what you're supposed to do. It took me like 15 playthroughs just to figure out how to beat this level. These maze levels aren't built around puzzles, they're built around trial and error, wandering around each level until you figure out what you're supposed to do on accident. But at least this crappy maze level is over. What comes next? No! Not another flying level, crap! And guess what? Now, the rings move. It sucked having to fly through the rings already, and now I have to do it while the rings are moving out of the way? Why does Superman have to fly through all these rings anyway? My heavens, a trail of rings has been stretched across the sky. I must fly through them in a perfectly sequential order or thousands of people could be mildly amused by their presence. Yeah, you better get used to flying because the pattern of this game is flying level, maze level, flying level, maze level. There are 7 of these damn flying levels throughout the game. Spend half of the game flying through rings. That's what people want in a Superman game. The 4th level of the game is Lex Corp, where the pre-level briefing tells you that you're looking for information on where all of Superman's friends are. Right off the bat, take a look at the starting room here. Do you see how far into the room I can see? It's not very far, is it? You're dropped into this level with no instructions or guidelines. You just explore this opening room and you have to try and guess what you're supposed to do. This is why I think the maze levels are worse than the flying levels. The flying levels are actually pretty easy to beat once you master the game's controls, although granted, that's like the 13th labor of Hercules. The maze levels, on the other hand, you get no help during these levels. Each one is a new circle of hell. If you explore the starting room in this level, you find 4 elevators, only one of which opens. However, you can't use the elevator, and every time that you try to use it, Lex makes fun of you. You don't want to play anymore? No, I don't want to play anymore! God damn you, contractual obligations! To get the elevator working, you have to find a piece of paper with 3 colors written on it, and you have to kill all of the dark shadows on this floor. Because the game's draw distance is so crap, you won't be able to see any of the dark shadows until you're right on top of them. It's honestly shocking how not fun the game's combat is. Unless you feel like using your heat vision, which runs out of ammo really quickly, there are 2 ways to kill these enemies. You can punch enemies, but this requires getting up close to them, which puts you at the mercy of the game's awful, plodding walking controls. Yes, this game's programmers somehow managed to screw up walking. Superman walks unbearably slowly, and if you try to turn too far while you're walking, Superman stops dead in his tracks until he stops turning. You're far better off flying around the levels if you actually want to get anywhere, except if you fly anywhere near a wall, you get stuck because the game's collision detection is awful, and the game's physics engine has no idea what momentum is. You can fly into enemies to kill them, but the game's hit detection kind of sucks, and the game won't always register that you hit him. When you use the elevator, you come into a room with kryptonite and 3 colored computers. You interact with the computers in the order indicated by the sheet of paper you found. Oh wow, an actual puzzle where the game outright tells you the answer. After you do that, you go down another elevator where you find more enemies and a second puzzle, and there's no other way to say it, this puzzle sucks monkey butt. You come across 6 computers with letters on them that spell out the word Luther. You'd think that you just operate the computers in order to spell Luther's name, but no, that would make too much sense. When you interact with one of the computers, a jumbled word appears in the center of the screen, and you have to use the consoles to unscramble the word. The problem is that whenever you operate a console, most of the letters in the word change, and the words on the panels change too. Not only that, but you're only given 3 minutes to solve this puzzle, or else you have to restart the level. So not only do you have a bat crap insane puzzle that makes no sense, you have a bat crap insane puzzle that you're given almost no time to solve. I figured out that one panel changes all of the letters, one changes all but the first letter, one changes all but the first 2 letters, and so on. You just experiment to figure out which panels do what until you spell Luther 1 letter at a time. It's a simple puzzle to figure out, but you're given almost no time to figure it out. After you solve that puzzle, you go up one more elevator and you find neatly typed up sheets of paper telling you where all of Superman's friends have been taken. Yes, I can just see Darkseid sitting down at a desk to type up this letter, can't you? Why couldn't Superman just get to Luthor's office by flying through the window in the first place? Why did I have to go through all of that crap and go through that whole building just to get here? Why am I still playing this game? Why does this black hole of fail exist? I'm sorry. This game is too much concentrated fail for me to contain in one video. Stay tuned for part 2. I need to go play something good or else I'm going to kill myself.